Hello! In this two-part series, I'm going to go through the importance of every single US president and also some fun facts about them that I thought were interesting. Starting off with the first, George Washington. He's the only president to not identify with a political party and even warned against having a two-party system. He also set the standard of only doing 2 terms. Although the 2-term limit wasn't put into law until the 22nd Amendment in 1951. In Washington's will, he said that any slave still owned by his family after his wife's death would be freed. And they were! He's most well known for being a general in the Revolutionary War, and of course, being the first president of the United States. John Adams. He was the first president to live in the White House. More importantly, Adams negotiated the Treaty of Paris, which officially ended the Revolutionary War and established the borders of the United States. I'm Gavin in editing here. For some reason I forgot to say this in the video even though I wrote it in the script. Adams also signed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which limited immigration and lowered free speech. Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson and previous President John Adams both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826. Which was the 50th anniversary of the United States. Interestingly, he invented the swivel chair and also introduced mac and cheese to the United States. He's very famous for being the lead author of the Declaration of Independence, but a more recent history shows that he very possibly had children with some of his slaves, which, yikes. Yeah, let's just forget about that. Moving on, James Madison. He was a bit quieter than the previous presidents, but he became renowned for writing the Bill of Rights, leading him to be known as the Father of the Constitution. Madison was the shortest president we've had thus far, being 5'4". Interestingly, I'm also 5'4". Well, maybe 5'5", I don't know, I haven't checked in a while. Still, short. During his presidency, the White House was burned down by the British, and it had to be rebuilt. James Monroe. He was the 3rd president to die on July 4th. However, it was a later year than Adams and Jefferson. Monroe went through the Louisiana Purchase, which almost doubled the size of the United States, and made the Monroe Doctrine, which created the basis for America's foreign policy. John Quincy Adams. As you may be able to tell by his name, he was the first of only 2 presidents to be the son of a president, his father being John Adams, of course. JQA was the first president to have a known photograph taken of them. After his presidency, he went into the House of Representatives and was openly against slavery. In fact, he even represented Black Americans who had escaped in the Supreme Court, helping them remain free. Andrew Jackson. In his life, he was in an estimated 103 duels, one of which left a bullet stuck between his ribs for the rest of his life. Deserved. When Jackson was 68, somebody tried to assassinate him. They pulled out a gun. That one jammed. So they pulled out another gun they had, and it also didn't work. Jackson responded by beating the man with his cane until he had to be pulled off of him so he wouldn't kill the man. As president, he signed the Indian Removal Act, which forced Native Americans to less desirable land and led to the Trail of Tears. Martin Van Buren. He was the first president to be born a U.S. citizen. Despite that, he's the only president to not speak English as their first language. He originally spoke Dutch. Notably, he helped create the Democratic Party and influenced Andrew Jackson in a lot of his political opinions. Van Buren opposed the annexation of Texas to avoid expanding slavery. William Henry Harrison. Oh, he's most famous for being the first president to die in office. He gave the longest inauguration speech of any president and then died 31 days later. It was originally believed he died of pneumonia after standing out in the cold rain without a jacket, but later research shows that he actually died from typhoid from drinking some bad water. Ooh, stub my toe. John Tyler, who's the first person to become president from being a vice president of a president who died. This decision was actually somewhat controversial at the time because there was no law set in place saying that the vice president would become president. Tyler was also the first president to get married while in office. Also, more importantly, he approved the annexation of Texas, which made it a state. James K. Polk. He's the one to popularize playing Hail to the Chief for the president. Polk called for the creation of the Washington Monument. He also added over 1 million square miles to the United States. Only 3 months after his presidency, he died, making him have the shortest retirement of any president. Well, not counting any who died in office. Zachary Taylor. He was nominated for president for the Whig Party without even being told. Yeah, he didn't know until later that he was actually on the ballot to become president. Taylor opposed the Compromise of 1850, which would expand slavery, despite him being a Southerner and a slave owner. The cause of Zachary Taylor's death is not completely known. It's very possible, though, that his death was from him eating a bunch of unpitted cherries and a glass of ice-cold milk. Yeah, that one's my favorite theory. I think it's hilarious. I don't know why. Millard Fillmore. He, unlike his predecessor, signed the Compromise of 1850, which expanded slavery, but postponed the beginning of the Civil War. However, part of the Compromise of 1850 was the Fugitive Slave Act, which said if a slave escaped to a free state, their owner could come and claim them. But there was no way to know whether the person they claimed was their slave actually was. So a lot of people just got away with taking a free person into slavery. Franklin Pierce. He signed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which slowed the spread of slavery, but also partially led to the Civil War starting. It caused the Bleeding Kansas crisis, which made tensions between the North and South much higher. James Buchanan. He was the final key to the Civil War starting. Buchanan did not stop or even encourage the South not to secede from the Union, which led to conflict between the North and the South. Abraham Lincoln. He was the first to many things. He was the first president to be a Republican, and he was the first president to be assassinated. Lincoln was an astounding wrestler. He played 300 matches and only lost 1 of them. But we all know him for being a great leader during the Civil War, keeping the nation together, and signing the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves. Lincoln went on to become the most famous and most loved president we've ever had. Andrew Johnson. He's very well known for being the first president to be impeached. This is because he removed Edwin Stanton from being Secretary of War, replacing him with Lorenzo Thomas, which was a violation of the Tenure Office Act. It was acquitted by only 1 vote. Unrelated, Johnson also pardoned a lot of ex-Confederates. Ulysses S. Grant. He was the most successful general in the Civil War. Vicksburg, Chattanooga, and the Overlord campaigns were just a few of the battles that he led during the war. Later, after being elected, Grant signed the Civil Rights Act of 1875, that aimed to give equal public accommodations. However, its poor phrasing led to a loophole allowing segregation. Grant pushed for the 15th Amendment and radical reformation of the South. Also, one time he got a speeding ticket while on a horse. Rutherford B. Hayes. He removed federal troops from the South, ending post-war Reconstruction. Hayes in 1879 signed the Lockwood Bill, which allowed women to act as lawyers before the Supreme Court. Hayes also refused to have alcohol in the White House, instead serving lemonade. Side note, I love lemonade. James A. Garfield. He was the second president to be assassinated and the one to serve the least amount of time, other than William Henry Harrison, of course. During his short time in office, he advocated for the rights of Black Americans, once saying, "The elevation of the Negro race from slavery to the full rights of citizenship is the most important political change we have known since the adoption of the Constitution of 1787. However, his death made him unable to follow through with his civil rights plans. Chester A. Arthur. He originally vetoed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which would have banned Chinese immigration. But then they came back with a version that would only ban it for 10 years, and would continue to ban Chinese citizenship. And then he improved that. But I mean, one of his favorite foods was eel, so there's that. Grover Cleveland. He's very well known for being the only president to serve 2 separated terms until our current president, Donald Trump. Cleveland accepted the Statue of Liberty as a gift from France. He also signed the Dawes Act, which allowed the president to break up reservation land, and was made with the intention of turning Native Americans into farmers and landowners, instead of letting them keep their native land. Guys, I promise I'm not trying to make this video sad. It's just happening. I don't know. That's history, I guess. Benjamin Harrison. He passed the Sherman Antitrust Act, which prohibited monopolies, trusts, and cartels. He also approved the McKinley Tariff, which raised the duty on imports about 50%. Harrison is the only president to be the grandson of another president, William Henry Harrison. His wife died while he was in office, so then he married her niece, who was 25 years younger than him. Yep. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to cut off the video here. I know I haven't gone through all of them yet, but I've said the word president 39 times, and I'm gonna leave this video to be a two-parter. The next video will come out as soon as possible. Bye!